Story 1. The Cursed Doll of Mexico. In 1991, a small town in Mexico was thrown into terror by a chilling event that centered around an antique doll. Ana Maria, a young girl of 10, received the doll as a gift from her grandmother. The doll was old, with glassy eyes that seemed too lifelike and a porcelain face that had a sinister smile. From the moment Ana Maria brought the doll into her home, strange things began to happen. She would wake up in the middle of the night to find the doll in different positions, sometimes even in different rooms. At first, she thought it was her younger brother playing pranks on her, but soon it became clear that something more sinister was at play. One night, Ana Maria's parents were awakened by her screams. Rushing to her room, they found her trembling in a corner, the doll sitting upright on her bed, its eyes fixed on Ana Maria. She claimed the doll had whispered to her, saying, "I will take you with me." Desperate, Ana Maria's parents sought help from a local priest, Father Rodrigo, who had experience dealing with supernatural phenomena. He performed a blessing on the doll, but as he did, the temperature in the room plummeted and a cold wind howled through the house. The doll's eyes seemed to follow him, filled with malevolence. Father Rodrigo decided to take the doll with him, hoping to rid the family of its curse. However, that night, the priest was found dead in his church, his body twisted in a grotesque manner, with the doll sitting beside him, its sinister smile wider than ever. The town was gripped with fear, and the local authorities decided to bury the doll deep in the woods, hoping to end its reign of terror. But strange occurrences continued to plague the town. People reported hearing whispers in the night and seeing the doll's lifeless eyes watching them from the shadows. Ana Maria and her family moved away, but she was never the same. She would often wake up screaming, haunted by nightmares of the doll. The legend of the cursed doll spread, and to this day, the people of the town live in fear of the night when they might hear the doll's sinister whisper, promising to take them away. Story 2. The Devil's Cave in Italy. In the rural countryside of Italy, there lies a cave that the locals call La Grotta del Diavolo, or the Devil's Cave. It is said that anyone who enters the cave never returns. The legend dates back to the 15th century, when a young woman named Isabella ventured into the cave to escape an arranged marriage. Isabella's fiancé, a cruel and powerful nobleman, had threatened her family, leaving her no choice but to flee. She was last seen running towards the cave, but when her pursuers entered, they found only darkness and a chilling silence. Despite a thorough search, Isabella was never found. Years later, in the 1970s, a group of adventurous teenagers decided to explore the cave, driven by curiosity and disbelief in the old legends. Among them was Marco, a skeptic who laughed off the warnings of the elders. Armed with flashlights and ropes, they entered the cave, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder, and their flashlights began to flicker. The walls of the cave seemed to close in, and an oppressive feeling of dread settled over them. They heard whispers echoing through the tunnels, calling their names in voices that were not their own. Suddenly, Marco's flashlight went out, plunging them into darkness. Panic set in as they struggled to find their way back. One by one, they felt something cold and clammy brush against them, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Marco felt a hand grab his ankle, and he was yanked into the darkness, his screams echoing through the cave. The remaining teenagers managed to stumble out of the cave, traumatized and terrified. They alerted the authorities, but a search yielded no trace of Marco. The cave entrance was sealed, and the area was declared off-limits, but the legend persisted. Locals claim that on quiet nights, you can still hear the echoes of Marco's screams and the chilling whispers of the lost souls trapped within the cave. Those brave enough to approach the cave at night report seeing shadowy figures and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. The Devil's Cave remains a haunting reminder of the unknown horrors that lurk beneath the earth. Story 3. The Witch of the Black Forest. In the heart of Germany's Black Forest, there is a village called Totmes, known for its dark legends and eerie atmosphere. In the early 1700s, a series of mysterious disappearances plagued the village. Children would vanish without a trace, and the villagers were gripped with fear and suspicion. An old woman named Helga, who lived on the outskirts of the village, became the prime suspect. She was a recluse, known for her knowledge of herbs and the occult. The villagers branded her a witch, believing she was responsible for the missing children. In a fit of rage and fear, they stormed her cottage, dragging her out into the forest. Helga was subjected to a brutal witch trial and ultimately burned at the stake. As the flames consumed her, she cursed the village, vowing that her spirit would return to exact revenge. The villagers, believing they had rid themselves of the witch, tried to move on, but the curse took hold. In the following years, Tatmos experienced a series of horrific events. Crops failed, livestock died mysteriously, and the forest seemed to come alive with sinister intent. People reported seeing Helga's ghost wandering the forest at night, her eyes burning with vengeance. In 1995, a group of historians and paranormal investigators decided to document the legend of Helga the witch. Among them was Dr. Anna Bauer, a skeptic determined to debunk the myth. They set up camp near the site where Helga was executed, equipped with cameras and recording devices. On the first night, they heard whispers in the wind and saw shadows moving among the trees. Their equipment malfunctioned, and a sense of dread settled over the camp. Dr. Bauer felt an icy hand touch her shoulder, and she turned to see the ghostly figure of Helga, her eyes filled with malice. Helga spoke, her voice echoing through the forest. "You have come to join the others." The team's cameras captured the chilling encounter, but they were too terrified to move. One by one, they began to experience hallucinations, seeing their deepest fears come to life. The next morning, the villagers found the investigators' camp abandoned. Their equipment was scattered, and there was no sign of Dr. Bauer or her team. The footage they left behind showed Helga's ghostly figure, her curse still haunting the forest. The legend of the Witch of the Black Forest remains a terrifying reminder of the price of fear and superstition. Story 4. The Shadowman of New Orleans. In the vibrant city of New Orleans, known for its rich history and supernatural lore, there is a house in the French Quarter with a dark reputation. Built in the early 1800s, the house has seen many residents, but none have stayed for long. It is said to be haunted by the Shadowman, a malevolent spirit that brings terror to all who encounter it. In 2003, the Williams family moved into the house, unaware of its sinister history. They were excited to start a new chapter in their lives, but strange occurrences began almost immediately. Doors would slam shut on their own, and they would hear footsteps in the hallways at night. The youngest daughter, Lily, was the first to see the Shadowman. She described him as a tall figure with no distinct features, just a dark, shadowy presence that lurked in the corners of her room. Her parents dismissed it as a child's imagination, but soon, they too experienced the terror. One night, Mrs. Williams woke up to find the Shadowman standing at the foot of her bed, his hollow eyes staring into her soul. Paralyzed with fear, she couldn't move or scream. The figure slowly vanished, but the fear lingered. The next morning, she found deep scratches on her arms, as if she had been clawed by unseen hands. Desperate for help, the family called in a paranormal investigator, John LeBlanc, known for his expertise in dealing with malevolent spirits. John conducted a thorough investigation, setting up cameras and audio recorders throughout the house. As he reviewed the footage, John saw the Shadowman appearing in different rooms, always watching, always waiting. He discovered that the house had been built on the site of an old slave market, and the Shadowman was the tormented spirit of a slave who had been brutally murdered. Determined to free the spirit, John performed a cleansing ritual, but the Shadowman fought back with terrifying force. Objects flew across the room, and the walls shook as if the house itself was alive. John recited prayers and commands, urging the spirit to find peace, but the Shadowman's presence only grew stronger. In a final desperate act, John burned sage and holy herbs, filling the house with smoke. The Shadowman let out a deafening roar, and the temperature plummeted. With a final prayer, John commanded the spirit to leave. The house shook violently and then silence. The Williams family decided to move out, unable to shake the feeling of dread that lingered. The house in the French Quarter remains empty, a chilling reminder of the shadow man's terror. Locals say that on quiet nights, you can still hear whispers and see the shadowy figure lurking in the darkness, waiting for its next victim.